Welcome to our group. Babs Rangaiah, Cathy, Davies, Greg Stuart, all good friends, and I think representing different perspectives across the brand and mobile ecosystem. Everybody's bios are there, so we don't need to talk about that. But what I would love to do is sort of dive in, because we've heard a lot of things over the last couple of days, and at the center of many of the discussions, mobile is right there. And what Spencer had asked us to talk about today is how brands deal with it. So Babs, I want to start with you. I said this to you 2 years ago here in Monaco. You're the guy with the money. So, you know, what the rest of us have to say isn't, you know, worth as much. So how are you, Babs, particularly dealing with mobile as part of your role in global communications planning, and specifically want to talk about your experience recently diving right in with the iAd and how that came together with the launch sponsorship from Unilever. So if you wouldn't mind riffing a little, which I know is difficult for you, Babs.
So, no, I think, so mobile is one of the key areas. I oversee all global communications planning. And, you know, as it relates to the digital space, I think, you know, the 4 key areas we've really highlighted is social, mobile, video, and search. Also thinking about gaming and e-commerce. Most of our growth is going to be coming from the developing and emerging markets, and mobile is the place where we really believe that we have to kind of work with in order to really reach our consumers, mobile is the place that most of them will get online, because what do we say, 25% of the world is online today. The next 75%, the vast majority, will get online via mobile, and most of that will be in the D&E world. So it's important to us, as far as what we're doing in the space. I mean, I think as we talk, I'll get into a number of examples, but it's still kind of the very, very, very early stages. So if the internet in general is, you know, call it elementary school, you know, mobile is still in its real infancy as it relates to what we're doing in marketing. But we do have a number of cases. So I don't know if you want me to get into that now, or
yeah, no, I think Babs, it would be great, because case studies are always the best way to learn, particularly at the scale that you play. And you know, you did launch on the iAd platform, you know, as one of the original launch sponsors back in the spring. So
yeah,
I'm curious
so
if you could.
I think as it relates to what we're doing in mobile, we're trying to reframe how to think about using the space, not just in mobile, but across kind of all the new media channels. So, you know, we don't believe that kind of banners and buttons on websites are going to be, you know, that's going to be the impact over the course of time. So we've done a lot of things where we reframed how it can be used. I know I was telling some people, we created a great app for acts in kind of India and Japan, whereby we had the insight that 80% of guys in that age group, 18 to 24, use their mobile phone as their alarm clock. So rather than running ads, we actually created an app that allows them to get woken up every day by this, you know, hot, sexy voice, essentially calls them. And it takes advantage of the way people access technology in those markets. So in India, while there's not a huge penetration of broadband internet over mobile, we actually had it as an actual phone call wake-up service with a video recording that wakes them up, you know, so it'd be like, hey, Babs, you know, this is so-and-so, it's time to wake up, blah, 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 it's contextually
Can we get someone to do voiceover, Babs? That's not getting me going.
She sounded a lot better than I did. But basically, so she wakes them up every day, and it's contextually relevant right before they get in the shower, where they would use the products and so forth. And it had millions of downloads in both India and Japan. And to your point, we you know, we had a great trip to Silicon Valley, where all our executives, kind of all the people that run categories, our CMO, our president, myself, and some of the other leadership went to Silicon Valley for a week. Met with the, you know, the key companies, Apple, Yahoo, Microsoft, Google, Facebook, et cetera, as well as kind of the up-and-coming companies. We met with the key VCs to really understand the trends and what's happening. And out of that came a deal we struck with Apple to be their presenting advertiser for the iAd program globally. And we thought, you know, it is, you know, as most of you probably have heard, it was an expensive proposition, but the reality is Apple, you know, as we saw it, really understood smartphones, kind of changed the game as it relates to mobile and the interface and the smartphones, and could really help us in a number of ways through strategy, design, technology, mobile, the way consumers use it, navigation, all that. And it's been a great partnership for us. And the iAds themselves, I think, are one way to reframe, and it'll probably continue to advance in how we connect with consumers, but we did launch with them.
So Cathy, switching to you and taking some direction from what Bab said about that couple waking up in the morning and before they do whatever they're going to do,
yeah.
The alarm clock goes off with a sexy voice. Do you look at mobile media as interrupting or enriching in that context?
I think for the most part it has the opportunity to enrich, exactly as was said before. And I think the reason it can enrich as well is that by and large people have a different relationship with their mobile phone than they do with other pieces of technology. I mean, certainly Sony Ericsson, we very much see ourselves as the inspiring friend. We do see this kind of intimacy that consumers have with their mobile device. Most people actually sleep with their mobile device within a kind of an arm's reach of themselves. And there's this kind of nomophobia now that people have, whereby the battery's flat or they can't actually get reception. So I think that because of that intimacy, there is the ability, and there's a lot of data and statistics that some of you may have seen, which actually show that people are far more inclined to open an MMS or an SMS than they are a whole bunch of emails that they get. So in terms of their propensity to participate in that relationship, I think that it does give you a much richer platform, and I think that we should learn the mistakes maybe from some of the other platforms like digital and sort of take away the annoying interrupting type advertising and in a sense leapfrog right the way through utility and into something that can be more engaging, because I think by and large consumers are actually willing to engage and participate with the mobile experience.
I mean, I read a statistic somewhere, and if you want to believe it, that the so-called digital natives, those people
Yeah.
born after 1980, think texting while having sex is okay. So I'm not sure, you know, if you...
Well, I mean, I'm actually not really a digital native. I'd like to think I was, but sadly I'm not. Something I was talking to our media company about actually with regard to mobile, because I'm always pushing them as a brand marketeer as well as someone that looks after obviously the wider opportunities within mobile as a platform, to kind of say, look guys, we really should be pushing the envelope, we should be much more innovative. And their report back to me was, well, Cathy, mobile is a bit like teenage sex. Apologies for this joke. A lot of people talk about it, but very few people are actually doing it, and even fewer are doing it well. So, you know, it's probably fairly true. I think it may well change as time goes on, but that's probably just them giving me excuses for why we don't have more innovative work out there right now.
Greg, I'm going to take a deep breath, count to 10, because I could get in trouble. But Greg, from your perch now, in a new perch at the MMA, in terms of your understandings, and previously your role at the IAB, this must be deja vu all over again for you. I mean, you've watched two, you know, wildly emerging technology shifts, and you've dealt with the brands, the publishers, the agencies, all dancing around that same sort of an issue in terms of measurement, in terms of effectiveness, all the things you've done in a previous life. Now you're doing it, you know, over again. It must be Groundhog Day for you. But are you seeing the same challenges to the brands, to the publishers, to the content providers, or do you see this as a whole different challenge?
Yeah, no, good question. First off, I notice I'm a little out of context here. I didn't realize we were going LA style here for our meeting. So I'll sort of, there we go, better. But yeah, you know, Michael, it's funny. So if you don't, those of you who I don't know.
That was funny, actually.
Yeah, that was good. Funny. I always have to do that with Michael when I meet with him. I have to dress the part and be like my customer, I guess. You know, I tell you, so those of you who I don't know, I was the CEO of the IAB in the U.S. who got to see and oversee a turnaround of that industry from $6 billion to $17 billion in the tenure that I was there, or as I like to say, from the dark years to the light years, 2001, 2007.
You were
and then
percentage, 10%, right?
We were up big, yeah. Exactly. But and now I'm the CEO, global CEO of the MMA. So, I'm doing a similar job now for the mobile industry, which, is interesting. In a lot of regards, I don't think mobile's really gotten off the launching pad in my perspective. It's unbelievable how little spending there is. And I actually think your joke is actually very appropriate because it feels very much like that. Everybody's talking about it. Nobody's doing it. And I don't know how you're all doing, but I'm pretty sure that we're not doing it well because that was my experience with internet. Is that there was this assumption, one of the big problems we have with internet is that people would they would take their learning, and all due respects, I'm a former CMO, so, all due respects, I would take my learning from another media and apply it to internet, and yet we saw again and again the ads failed, horrifically failed, and therefore the experience wasn't good, we didn't produce results, and therefore marketers were less inclined to invest in the media again. And that's a big fundamental challenge that, a trade group like the MMA will be very focused on helping brand marketers in addition to your own work. I think, though, Michael, what's interesting, so my original training, before I got in advertising, I was trained as an economist, so I tend to look at the world through that filter. And what I saw happening in internet at the time was a very simple premise, right? We had increasing supply, we had consumers who were grabbing onto a medium. Remember, broadband adoption, at least in the US, didn't slow down for a second in the downturn, right? So consumers are using more and they're using the internet more, page views are going up, and yet marketer spend was this or maybe down a little bit, which would suggest that that would put extreme pricing pressure and make internet the deal of the century. Consequently, I went to run the IAB, did $10 million of research, and proved that very point, that internet was the deal of the century. My guess is that what's happening on mobile today is very much the same thing. You have inventory access, usage going like this. Marketer spend is, I think, maybe going up a bit, not nearly the rate inclined to what consumers are doing. Therefore, it should very much be the deal of the century, and I suspect very much the research that we'll do will just support that point. And so it's a huge opportunity, and I saw again and again marketers who would take advantage of that new media and completely transform their business and their careers as a result of seeing that opportunity. So it's a big one.
Okay, but Greg, keep going on that theme. And so what do brands really need to do to make it better? I mean, what do those prepubescent brands need to do to enhance the experience at this point? Is it around measurement like it was in the early days, which it still is? Is it around that currency for how successful has this been? What's it driven?
Yeah, so I am 6 weeks into the job, so I want to be kind of careful that the public comments I make are sort of my general observations and not sort of based on sort of having met with all the membership at this point. Michael, I don't know that it's going to be as much about measurement, although that was a huge issue for the internet business that we very successfully solved, thank goodness. I don't know that the industry that marketers overall had solved, and I also wrote a book about this topic, that marketers hadn't really sort of resolved how they measured their media anyway and sort of understood its impact and therefore were able to make better, quicker decisions about where they shifted funding. So that's, I think, a lot of work. And a lot of marketers, Unilever, in fact, did one of the first 2 studies we did in that regard for Dove, which was completely eye-opening to the business. So all that work needs to happen. I think the things that I'm a little concerned about for mobile is that I don't think that you kind of alluded to it earlier, Pastor, I don't think the formats are right. I certainly don't think they're sexy, and they certainly are probably not going to attract the greatest creative talent, which is a big issue because I'm a fundamental believer that creative is the greatest return on investment in advertising. It's just, I would kind of look to some of those directions, how we begin to continue to create a better media channel that will both be attractive to advertisers and at the same time work for consumers. I think that's where I said. But all these other fundamental issues like measurement and all that other stuff also has to be addressed and fixed.
But look, at the end of the day, we know, and Babs and I have talked about this at length. I think the number, Babs, correct me if I'm wrong, 2 billion people a day touch a Unilever product, a brand of some sort under some name. You're a network. Clearly, you're a network. Yep. How are you using that position as a network and bringing it together with mobile? Because talking about touching the brand, everyone's carrying that mobile phone or that mobile device, all the time. And how do you bring that experience together in terms of your network and the mobile network and the brand?
Yeah. So again, I think it goes back to. I think part of the point he made about measurement is we're just not doing enough yet to actually measure anything. But I do think the way that you can use mobile today without the full kind of internet penetration, So there's whatever 4 or 5 billion phones out there, but only a handful or a certain percentage have any internet access, is to use things like packaging and other media in kind of SMS format. So other things that we do are, we had another great ad where we ran a print ad that was missing a piece, and the only way you could get it was if you send a short code in and you'd get back the missing piece, so then you'd put the phone up against the print ad. We've had a lot of kind of text to vote kind of programs. So there's a lot of stuff going on in kind of the SMS world, which is the one thing that we know that almost everybody can universally do. We have an investment in a company that subsidizes minutes, in South Africa. So, recognizing what the needs are and addressing those through utility or through some other kind of relationship-oriented thing is the way to tap into your current consumers. And that's kind of where we are right now. And it's interesting because the creativity with mobile can come from technology itself. So we have this other great app that we have this ice cream business that the actual campaign idea is called Share Happy. And we created some software that's smile recognition. So if you smile at the, you open up the app, if you smile, it recognizes you're smiling, and we have vending machines where you actually get free ice cream. But in this case, you could, if you post it or send it or forward it, then you get a free coupon for ice cream. So that, the creativity there is in the technology itself, the smile recognition software and the ability to forward it. So I think, that's kind of the things that we're doing right now. It's all in SMS, it's technology. In some cases, it's apps. We're trying a lot of different models to figure out what is the right approach, because it is not, to your point, you can't just translate on other media and advertising from one channel to another right away. I mean, you start that way, which is what banners and buttons were on the internet, but now you're seeing far more innovative approaches in social media and things like that. And the same thing's going to happen in mobile. And if you look back historically, when television first launched, they were basically radio ads. They just had a visual standing there because that's what people were used to. And when radio first launched, it was basically news, because that's all people were doing with newspapers, and eventually became music and sporting events and things like that. So, we're at that early stage. We'll figure it out. And then over time, it doesn't happen overnight, you'll figure out the right model based on how consumer usage is, based on consumer penetration, based on internet penetration, and you'll see that those models will evolve, and we'll look back 10, 15 years from now and think about how rudimentary what we're doing, not just in mobile, but just I think in the internet in general, will change significantly.
Cathy, go ahead.
I was just going to build on that point and say it's amazing how many really successful retailers or really successful brands just haven't done some of the basics, like make sure that their site's optimized for mobile platform. Like a massive, I'm from the UK, and obviously one of our brand success stories is a company like Tesco, and a huge amount of their transactions actually go over mobile. But at the end of the day, it's very, very recent that they've actually come to a point to optimize their site experience for mobile. I think part of it as well, talking here as an advertiser, is it's still very fragmented, actually, in terms of your ability to actually get, you want to work in an innovative space. I do believe that mobile has the ability to create impact over reach as well as pure kind of reach. But it's actually quite difficult to work with all the different stakeholders in a very fragmented marketplace to actually be sure that you're reaching your target, even, in the most basic areas. So I think that as a marketeer, for me, feels like an area as well as measurement. But in a sense, access has to come before measurement, I think, to your point.
Cathy, when we were talking in preparation for this, you had a line which resonated with me, which was something about no brand is an island anymore. So, you wear two hats. You're a brand just like everyone else.
Yeah.
You spend a fair amount of money on marketing, and you're also that handset manufacturer who's, touching the 2 billion people that Babs is touching every day, or whatever your percentage of that is, obviously.
Yeah.
And how do you wear those two hats? What do you see as the opportunities, A, as a handset manufacturer, and then B, as a marketer?
I think, first of all, perhaps to take as a handset manufacturer, from our perspective, we have a great opportunity to be able to actually enrich a consumer experience within their handset if we were to get the right inventory, and also to kind of think about the the relevance of what's being served at a particular point in time. So I don't think we have to be in a position where we make consumers endure advertising or endure banners, buttons, etc. I mean, one of the cute things we're doing over the sort of ski season is we've taken over Ishkal, and we have a number of, through GPS location based with Foursquare, people can actually check in at different bars, different huts on the mountain, etc. And if you check in at a certain number of places, you just hold up and you get a free schnitzel. I mean, just something fun to put a smile on people's face. And I think that that's the immediacy, the gratification, the reward that mobile offers, I think, is great for us. And of course, what we want to make sure that can happen as a mobile provider is that we can stitch together all the social networkings, all the location-based services, moving forward, looking into the gaming genres as well, so that people actually can take their whole life with them at a point in time. They can port wherever they are from an entertainment perspective, from a productivity perspective, from a healthcare perspective, and actually that's always with them. So, you know, it literally is kind of always on. I think so our opportunity really, or our challenge perhaps, is to be able to be the glue in their life and really be the remote control of their life as far as is possible. And the benefit of that, of course, is that it provides such an open platform because, as was said, in some of the developing markets, you know, there's earlier adoption of those kind of technologies simply because there's no legacy of behavior based on kind of historical platforms and, you know, in ways that you can interact. And clearly Ericsson is part of that, making that happen as part of the joint venture. From a brand marketeer's perspective, it's very much in the early days for us as well, to be perfectly honest with you. Again, we can see that mobile provides for more opportunities to actively engage. You can obviously see redemption working really, really nicely through the mobile platform. But I think what we lack at the moment is true kind of creativity and impact. And as a brand, Sony Ericsson's a brand that is quite an impactful, youthful brand. And so for us, you know, we want to have kind of richer formats really to be able to actually bring the brand to life fully. And embeds, you know, entertainment in that, music, movies, all sorts of things.
Greg?
Hey, I just want to respond back to sort of a question you raised earlier, because I think it's an interesting one, because as these things sort of move through a transition. So I agree with you about the fragmented thing. It's really a mess, and it's a disaster. And, you know, the unfortunate thing about digital media is it creates more friction. You know, the longer we're in digital media, the more friction in the process, not the less, right?
But friction can be good, Greg, in terms of driving innovation.
Yeah, well, yeah. Somebody's got to solve the problem. Totally agree that there's opportunity then for venture capitalists and others to come into the space. But this whole issue about, you know, either not understanding, having the new media not integrated into your channels, and your processes for your agencies, they become unprofitable. I mean, we all know the horror stories of, you know, an agency that can buy $100 million of television with one person, and yet it takes 10 people to spend $100,000 in digital kind of situation. The one, though, I want to raise is that it's funny that we don't look at mobile, though, as a reach vehicle, given the degree to which everyone has one. And I remember Ed Zander speaking at a Google Zeitgeist event 6-7 years ago, who said at that time that there were 4.5 billion people had never made or received a phone call in the world, and yet I think the number of handsets today is 5 billion. So the whole world has shifted tremendously, and we did an interesting thing for the internet. I still remember the day that the researcher, Rex Briggs, who had done the book with me and did a lot of that research for the IAB, came to us and told us that Ford had done a study where they ran on the home pages of, at that time, the 3 big portals. Very different world today, but at that time, Yahoo, AOL, and MSN in the States. And we found that by running those ads one day, that advertising reached 43% of all men 25-54 in the country. I mean, I remember at the time thinking, I was the head of the IB, I couldn't believe that internet had that kind of reach because none of us believed it. So I think there's still this opportunity I guess what I'm trying to advocate is for, you know, let's be careful about some of our assumptions around some of that, because there might be more opportunity in this than we actually realize. And to the victor sort of goes the spoils kind of situation. If you figure that out, what's interesting is that ad that Ford ran performed 11 times better, that online ad performed 11 times better than their TV spending did on a dollar per dollar basis. That was revolutionary information, and Ford went on to completely kick ass for this launch. That's how they were truck guys. It was the Ford F-150. That's how they talked about it, with kick ass all the time. But it was a very powerful idea and really helped transform that company.
So what's the role of the creative agency in this conversation? What's the role of the digital agency? What's the role of the media agency? I mean, does the creative agency lend that creativity to avoid what you talked about earlier, taking a radio ad and putting it on television, or taking a print ad and putting it on radio? Has that code been cracked yet, in terms of what the, let's talk in arcane terms for the purpose of making the point, what is the ad unit? How is that ad unit?
I think
Wait, first off, let's remember, just like internet, mobile is not a medium. It is a channel of a lot of mediums. Internet was the same thing. And I think it was this assumption that it was this one homogenous kind of thing that got us in a little bit of trouble. That doesn't make your jobs or your agent's jobs any easier, but it's an understanding that there's so much more going on there. So, but I think you should answer the question.
I mean, I think, just together. Like the way that digital agencies started in the first place with the internet, I think you're seeing some specialty mobile companies today. And I know that, from our perspective, we've been using a lot of specialty agencies for things like creating apps and some of the other things that I talked about. The creative agency is critical for the, kind of the base level idea.
But are they stepping up, Babs, the way they need to? And I don't mean to pick anyone out at all, but in general, are they willing to help create that new?
They're totally willing. All the agencies are willing. I think it's an issue of business model, focus areas, talent. And right now, if you really want to be the innovator and do things early, I think you have to go through specialists right now in the beginning, and then eventually, I think it all comes back to your key partner agencies, which is the same thing that's happening in digitally more broadly. But we have a company called Jewel, which is fantastic, that's really helping us specifically with how to approach mobile, how to approach it in different markets, how to build the technology for it, and how consumer usage impacts, the connection with brands. So, I mean, that's my perspective. I think, everybody probably has a different way because, to your point, it's kind of the Wild West. But, I think it's hard enough to get our traditional agents to really embrace and use the digital space more broadly in a way that's totally appropriate. And that's why you have still several different models on how brands are using companies. A lot of, for some of our brands, we're using creative agencies who really have upped their game and understand how to use the space properly, and some agencies haven't. So, I mean, there's a lot of that has to do with talent.
And collaboration, I would think.
Talent, collaboration, focus, business model. Those are kind of the four areas because, I think one of you mentioned that the business model, to a large extent for many companies and even, for us to some extent, as though we're changing that dramatically, is that the television spot, the over-reliance on television as your advertising is still, from a mindset standpoint, the center of most big companies' marketing programs. And some of that has to do with the fact, it's a generation gap. People who were in marketing generally in their 30s, 40s, 50s, and they weren't, to your point, natives, weren't born into the space, they don't live the space. It's hard to, even if you don't, besides coming up with the idea, it's hard to actually evaluate, analyze, or approve an idea when you don't really even understand, how consumers are using it if you're not on it regularly. I had a great tweet a few months ago. I said, you can't get into shape by reading about exercise. You've got to do it. You've got to live it, and that's the same thing. You've got to live the space. I'm the only one who says my tweet was great. And that's a strange thing to say. I had a great tweet.
Babs, in LA,
we thought about that after I said
in LA, we have people who exercise for us. It's a whole different.
Yeah, exactly. That's why he's untucking his shirt.
That's it. That's right, because I'm not doing it enough.
Yeah.
That's right.
You got somebody else working out.
I mean, I'd just like to build on that. I totally agree with you. I think at this stage, maybe it might be best to actually go to a specialist. But one of the points I'd want to make, though, is I think that we all understand how consumers, generally speaking, will consume media in a kind of stacking mentality. They'll be watching TV, they'll be, maybe having their iPad or their smartphone next to them. So I think it's really important that when you do go out to a specialist, that actually you could even consider using your paid media as an amplifier for what you're actually doing on social or within mobile, as opposed to having the paid media piece and its, creativity and its proposition, and then, at a tangent almost having whatever you're doing on mobile. So what I'm trying to do with our marketers internally is really focusing on paid, owned and earned, and really saying that everything we're doing should be driving earned media. We rely first of all on our owned channels, of which mobile should be considered to be one, and then we amplify with paid.
Right. Well, look, one of the first projects I worked with Babs on was in the original Dove webisodes, And my recollection, the numbers are irrelevant, but the amount of print that you used to drive, to your point, to the webisodes was you know,
No,
proportionately.
absolutely. And that's why it all has to be integrated, which is why I think all the agencies still play a central role. I think on the specific execution, implementation of the mobile piece of it is where you use the specialists. But but then the disadvantage, the specialists don't know anything about your business, haven't been with your brand for 20, 30 years, and don't necessarily understand broader strategy, marketing strategy, and business planning. So all of that has to be integrated, and we work with all of our teams as there's more people, I think, but eventually over time, your primary partner agencies have to kind of, get up to speed. And once the consumer landscape is at a point where it's mainstream and the internet's everywhere and all that, it probably will get to that.
So considering where we started the conversation, that reminds me of the noted anthropologist Mae West, who I think the quote was something like this: sex is like bridge. If you don't have a good partner, you better have a good hand, right? I mean, there's but I digress.
That's a lot.
You were afraid of her joke?
Exactly. So I think we have a couple more minutes before Spencer takes me off the stage after that comment. Michael?
You always like this?
You can shout it out.
You mean you recorded what I just said? Holy sh! Oh my God. That means I can't use that line again for a while.
When I was growing up in the business, the last medium that touched a consumer before entering into a transaction was the Yellow Pages. Now, obviously, what we've heard at this conference, the last medium, the consumer is bringing it right to the transaction. Advertising is the biggest, but not the only part of the money you spend to market and merchandise your products. Couponing and other distribution-driven elements seem maybe even more able to benefit from this technology. I was wondering if you could just share with us some of your thinking on that side of your business model.
I totally agree. I mean, I think the advantages of mobile go even further than the advantages of interactivity and digital, the location-specific opportunities and the ability to offer people, if you're in a grocery store, recipes that they can, pick the products for right there, as well as, compare pricing, and all that is fantastic. I think, we are experimenting in some cases in ways that we can do that, but the consumer adoption yet is just not there yet. So I think, it would be great for, marketers tend to follow eyeballs as opposed to lead them, which maybe, in this case, we probably should get ahead of that. But we're experimenting with a lot of exactly what you're saying, and that's through augmented reality, QR codes, all that stuff. But then all of that changes every 6 months, too. Like one day it's QR codes, and then 6 months later, like, no one's using QR codes. We've switched to something else. So, that's all kind of experimental right now until consumers have been conditioned, and maybe we're the ones that need to condition, but possibly retailers or technology itself. But once that gets to be more of a conditioned process, I think you'll see a lot more of that, and it could, to your point, offer huge advantages to us.
I think we have time for maybe one more
very
question.
quick.
Right there, in the center.
Yeah, Shannon.
So I'm going to steal a quote from somebody, and I wish I knew who I was stealing it from because I'd be able to give them credit, so I apologize to whoever's quote this is. But somebody once said to me that agencies are only as innovative as their clients are brave. And a lot of great ideas get left on the cutting room floor by agencies on a regular basis. How do we push the decision makers at the brands to get those ideas to go forward so that we can be innovative on your behalf?
I mean, I think that's absolutely right as well. I think, it's easy to blame agencies, but I think the funny thing is when I got into this role, so we have kind of various constituencies. We have local countries. We have what's called brand development, which is kind of where I am in London, the headquarters where most of the global creative is created. And we have, agencies. And so it's funny, when I went through and talked to all the different teams, all of them blamed the other group for not being more innovative. So the markets blamed the global teams say the markets won't take it. The brands say the agencies aren't leading us. The agencies say the brands aren't brave enough and don't understand what's going on. So I think there's some truth to all of that. But I absolutely will agree that marketers and even in our company as well, are not all there. I mean, there's still the over-reliance, especially when the economy got hit. I think people went even more back to traditional approaches because that was something they knew, and that's something that they knew could at least work in some capacity.
But Babs, just to put a fine point on it, and I know we're going to have to close on this, what you did, and you alluded to it earlier, and we had the privilege of participating in it, was taking that trip where you took those brand leaders who we all know control the money and educating them so that this was not blind faith anymore.
Part of it is this idea of living the space. So the way you get people to live the space is to do exactly that. So we got all the executive leadership to get immersed for a week in Silicon Valley. We've cascaded a number of different learnings from that and actions that we took directly from that throughout the company. I've been on, quite a road trip across many of our biggest markets. So, I mean, I think we're really driving that. And everybody, by the way, has elevated what they're doing, agencies, ourselves, in the last few years. There's still a long way to go. I think there's always the handful of, it's the talent. I think there's a handful of people on brands, ad agencies who can really lead it, and that's why you get certain brands that are doing great work and other brands that aren't. What we're trying to do is institutionalize that across the company. So when you're at a company of our size, with the number of brands that we have and the number of agencies we have, it's something that has to be institutionalized. We've written our global digital roadmap. We've written our global digital strategy. It's very much, it's focused now, as I mentioned, our key channels. We're building media labs in every market so that people, even if they have firewalls, can live the space and go into that room and evaluate campaigns in real time with no firewalls and all the newest technologies and everything the markets are doing. So, as well as really understanding future trends. So, there's so much that we're doing in understanding, and part of that was seeing the VCs. But if you look at like South Korea or Japan, I think you really can see what mobile is going to be like in a few years. People use their mobile phones there for everything from their subway tokens to they can watch video on their trains. They take attendance in schools with mobile. I mean, everything is done there mobile. It's not going to be a long time before that's across the board. You can always kind of see by looking forward at where markets are already advanced what's going to happen. So there's a number of things that we're doing. There's a number of things that can be done. And to your point, you're absolutely right. Part of it is us. Part of it's the agency. It's very much people.
Okay.
On that note, thank you very much, guys.
We have airplane issues, but the good thing, we also have a solution.